Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. Today is a good day. Tanvi Marupally is at home with her family, safe and sound, exactly where she should be. I'm not sure everybody heard that. Tanvi Marupally is at home, safe and sound with her family where she should be. As many of you know, Tanvi left school on January the 17th of this year. However, instead of getting on the bus, Tanvi continued to walk down Davis Street north into the northern part of town. Until yesterday, that is all the information that we had about the disappearance of Tanvi Marupally. Today, we know that she continued walking north to the railroad tracks. Once she reached the railroad tracks, she continued to walk down them for several miles through the night. She continued walking the next day until she found a train which she could board. She boarded that train and eventually made her way to Kansas City. After several days, she arrived in Kansas City on approximately January the 22nd, at which time she entered the community and found a homeless shelter. She checked into that homeless shelter under a false identity and stayed in the Kansas City area for approximately 2 months. 2 months that she spent by herself in Kansas City. After that 2-month period, she decided that she was going to move. As far as we know, it was a random choice in moving, but she did catch a bus and she went to Tampa, Florida. When she arrived in Tampa, she found an abandoned building that she began to reside in. Tanvi's love for the library is ultimately what led to her discovery. She found a local library where she was researching jobs that she could do for cash off of Craigslist. Fortunately, there was a Tampa area citizen that recognized that there was an individual in the library that matched the description of Tanvi. You've heard many times over the years, see something, say something. This is absolutely 100% the case here. That one individual, because they saw the picture on the website for the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, took a photograph of the person that they saw, forwarded it to them on the 28th. We received that information early in the morning of the 29th, and we began trying to verify that this was in fact Tanvi. That took several hours. It took several agencies. We reached out to the U.S. Marshal Service, who has been helping us from the very beginning of this case. We reached out to the Tampa Police Department. And ultimately, in a case of sheer luck, when the police department went to check to see video footage from the library, Tanvi had returned. At that point, they were able to make contact with her. She immediately identified herself as Tanvi Marupally and stated that she had left her family here in Conway, Arkansas. She was taken into protective custody, transported to the Tampa Police Department, where she was interviewed again to verify that the person that we were dealing with was in fact Tanvi. She was asked a series of questions that only Tanvi would know the answers to. And so at the end of that, we were certain that Tanvi had been located. That was at approximately 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon. We immediately began our efforts to reunite Tanvi with her family. Keep in mind, she was in Tampa, Florida, 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. We're here in Conway just finding out that she's there. We were able to organize, go to Tampa, pick her up, bring her back to Conway, Arkansas, do the necessary things that we have to do as part of the investigation, and reunite her with her family last night. That was an amazing amount of work by an amazing group of people. And we are very happy to say that she's exactly where she should be today. There is a long list of agencies that helped with this investigation throughout, and I'm going to attempt to name them. I am quite sure that I will leave somebody out. It is with no ill will. It's just quite an extensive list. First and foremost, I want to thank the Conway community and the individuals who worked tirelessly to keep this case in the public's eye. This community really came together and pulled 100% for Tanvi. We were not always in agreement. We did not always see things the same way. However, we all had the same goal in mind, and that was to bring Tanvi home. Additionally, we would like to thank the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Tampa Police Department, the Morgan Nick Foundation, the Arkansas Fusion Center, NAMUS, the U.S. Marshal Service, the Arkansas State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Attorney General's Office, Conway Public Schools, the Department of Human Services, A Child is Missing, Halos Investigations, Search Dogs South, Jacksonville Police Department, Conway Street Department, Conway Fire Department, Arkansas State Parks. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk briefly about all of the hard work and the dedication that the men and the women of the Conway Police Department put into this investigation. While not always visible, it's not always on the front page, and it's not always put out there for everyone to see for obvious reasons, these men and women have worked tirelessly to bring Tanvi home. We have a great police department. We have great people that work for the police department, and they should be thanked for a job well done. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy U.S. Marshal Jeremy Hammonds.
Hello. So, like Chief said, we were invited to come on this case. We were asked to assist kind of early on this. Normally, when you think of U.S. Marshals, you think of guys that track down fugitives, or we catch the escapee that breaks out of prison, or maybe you relate us to the Old West movies where the marshal rides into town. Well, we still do that stuff, kind of, but we've also, as of 2015, we've been brought on to do missing child cases. So I've been with the Marshal Service now for 13 years. This is actually one, I've worked a few missing child cases, but not to the extent that this one came with. They called me up because we actually have a fledgling MCU unit forming here in Eastern Arkansas that's going to be up and going full steam, I hope very soon. I have one other investigator that I have to thank that's worked with me tirelessly on this, and Megan Warnick. She is an expert in human trafficking and missing children, so I brought her on board, and she has been an absolute wealth of information for my team, for Conway. But we got involved early on. We sat down, we did a briefing with Conway PD. They told me what we had, and I remember one of the main things that stood out to me was they kept telling me over and over, they said, this child is known to be very resourceful, you know, she's probably good out in the woods, this kind of thing. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, we're talking about a 14-year-old girl here, you know, like, she reads books, she goes to the library, you know, and believe me, I was the nerd in high school, so I know, you know, I spent my time in the library. If you put me out in the woods, I'd have never made it. So I had no idea I was dealing with a little Rambo here. She was able to survive, get out there, and she made a long trek, and I'm very thankful that she made that very safely. When I got to seeing everything that was happening with this case, or from what I've heard, I was absolutely astonished that, you know, she did all this. Biggest thing is we're so glad that she's safe. We were strictly an assistive agency. You know, some people have asked, you know, what are the feds doing with this? We strictly came in and assisted. We didn't take the case. We don't ever go in and take over a case. We support that agency. And I have to say, every time I've met with any of the officers or detectives or staff there at Conway PD, they were very receptive. They were very responsive. I can remember late night calls where I was giving them information and they were moving on it like this. So I'm very proud of the work they did, and I was very proud to work alongside of them. So I just think she's here. So thank you.
Have to fix that. She got on to me for not having it where it needed to be earlier. So I'm gonna answer just a few questions, if there are any from the audience.
Did y'all happen to ask why she ran away? Did she give a reason as to why she left?
We believe that it was due to the stress involved from information that she believed the family might end up being deported, and because of that, she felt it was best for her to leave.
And I know there's been a lot of people involved in this investigation, including community members and law enforcement. As you just touched on it, you didn't always see eye to eye, but you had the same goal in mind. I know that there's a lot of parents out there who are concerned if this were to ever happen to their child, whether they go missing or run away, they would be maybe concerned of what the protocol is between, or the difference between a child who's missing, a child who's run away. And so, can you kind of help guide us on that? Like, is there a difference in how a child is, the investigation proceeds? If the child is a runaway or missing?
Right. So there is somewhat of a difference. There are resources that are available if a child is abducted. In those type of situations, an Amber Alert can be sent out immediately. Those things aren't available with a runaway. They mostly have to do with the initial investigation process between a runaway and a missing child or abducted child. But after a few days transpire, the investigation portion of it is pretty much the same, looking into different things, looking into different avenues, interviewing different people, all of those same sort of things.
And I know that y'all, again, had, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead. Just one more.
Sure.
And I know that y'all made a great effort to help find her. Do you think that there's something that could have been done differently?
So as a department, you know, honestly, as humans, we learn from every interaction that we have. Everything that we do, we learn things that we can do better or should do differently. So we take every opportunity to review what has taken place and what has done and make adjustments accordingly.
You touched on y'all's relationship with the public and having the same goal but not seeing eye to eye on some things. Do you feel like y'all did everything in your power to find Tanvi?
I do believe we worked tirelessly to find Tanvi. As I told you a minute ago, unfortunately in this case, we knew that she walked north on Davis Street. That is where it ended. We followed up on countless leads, countless tips, sightings, videos, all of these different things. But until yesterday, until last night, there was no viable information as to whereabouts of Tanvi. She was outside of this city the same afternoon that she walked away. There was no one that saw her. There was no one that had information. It was a dead end. We worked everything we could work, and when we had exhausted all of the tips and the information that we got, we started over again with the very basics back at the beginning to see if anything was missed, if anything could be seen that wasn't seen the first time. So we were very exhaustive.
And I know you mentioned a homeless shelter in Kansas City. Do you have the name of the homeless shelter?
I do not have the name in front of me, no ma'am, I don't. Yes ma'am.
Just to confirm, the photo sent from the library that was in downtown Tampa, that was on the 28th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You guys received it
That's
on
correct.
the 29th, and Tampa police went on the 29th, and she was there again.
Yes, that is correct. She was there on two different dates, times that we know of. We know that she was, as I said, she was searching for jobs on Craigslist. She had a phone, a functioning phone in her possession, and so she was she was maintaining out there, which is very difficult for me to understand with a 14-year-old, now 15-year-old child, but she absolutely was.
Do we know where she got that phone? Is that one that she had left with? We know she took a lot of clothing, things like that. Do we know anything about that?
So I am not aware where she got the phone. The investigators may have that information, but I don't have it with me.
Did she do all of this on her own, or did she have help from people?
We do not have any indication at this point that she received help from anyone else. One more question.
Was Union Pacific ever contacted?
I do not know that information off the top of my head.
And can you also speak to why there wasn't a press conference when she first went missing to get news?
Sure. I'm actually glad that you asked that question. There's been a lot of debate back and forth about why there was or why there was not a press conference. And I actually have already given you the reason. When Tanvi left, we had no information until yesterday as to where she was. She didn't have electronics. She didn't have anything of that nature. We followed the leads, but they kept leading us to a dead end. We had put the information out early on in our social media that said these are the things that we know. We had contact with several different media outlets, gave them the same information. The fact is that we just didn't have new information to give until yesterday. So,
One last thing.
last one, very last
I
one.
know you said.
No, she is the last one. I'm sorry.
I know that you said, it kept leading y'all to dead ends. Do you feel like without that tip, y'all would have been able to locate her?
So my belief is that at some point in time, she would have been located. But make no mistake about it, if it had not been for that individual from Tampa that stood up, saw something, and said something, Tanvi would not be home today. The search would continue. We as a community and the Marupally family owe that person a debt of gratitude. So that's all we have time for. I appreciate everybody.